Good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, depending on where in the world you're joining us from today. On behalf of the Foundation for IT Sustainability, we'd like to welcome you to International Green IT Awareness Week for 2012. Thank you for joining us for this very special live presentation. We're glad you can join us today. I'm Tim Martin, a project manager with the Foundation for IT Sustainability, and I'm going to give you a quick overview of today's session and also walk through some housekeeping items. Then I'll turn it over to our featured presenter, Karthik Subburaman, who will introduce himself and his topic and start the presentation. As you may know, International Green IT Awareness Week was founded and is sponsored by the Foundation for IT Sustainability, which is a global non-profit organisation. Our mission is to reduce the negative impacts of technology on the environment while promoting the sustainable use of technology to help solve environmental problems. We achieve this by educating individuals, corporations and government, promoting the implementation of green IT best practice, and encouraging the development of more sustainable technology alternatives. If you haven't heard of us before, please do visit us on the web at the address provided at the end of the presentation. So for today's presentation, we have Karthik Subburaman of ECC International joining us to present his topic entitled ISO 50001, Energy Management System. Karthik will present his material, a copy of which is available right now in PDF format on the session's registration page, and then we'll take questions. We'd ask that if you have any questions, please submit them in the question panel on the GoToWebinar control panel, and we shall answer your questions at the end of the presentation. Some of you have responded to my email inquiry asking for questions in advance, and we'll certainly try to address them in the course of the presentation or at the Q&A selection at the end. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Karthik to introduce himself and his presentation.
Thank you, Tim. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, like Tim just mentioned, friends. I'd like to take the opportunity to first thank the Foundation for IT Sustainability to organize the wonderful webinar event of this form, the Green IT. I guess this is one of the real need of the hour around the world, with significant amount of interest going into energy efficiency measures, having a sustainable environment, operating corporate sustainability and things like that. In fact, it has come to a point where there is an abuse of these terms and probably without appropriate relevance and significance put to it. But it is only expected to happen considering the importance that the topic is gaining, so which is a good thing in one way. I'm sure some of you have already attended other webinars and have learned a lot of new topics from yesterday. So let me, without delaying much, take you through the presentation. But before that, let me give you a very quick overview about myself and the organization I represent, maybe in a minute or two. Probably you're seeing a logo on the cover slide, which has two logos there actually, ECCI and Apex. ECCI is primarily a consulting and training company with headquarters in the Philippines, but presence across Southeast Asia with projects across South and Southeast Asia. What we are involved in is heavily in implementing management systems and best practices, cutting across industries, focused on operations improvement, starting from quality to health and safety to environment, of course up to IT as well, which we've been doing over the last 14 years. Of course, one of the significant topics of interest in the last 3 to 5 years, I would say, was not there before that, at least not as widespread as it is these days, is energy management and corporate sustainability, if I may. I mean, we will probably go one step back, friends, from Green IT and talk about corporate as a whole and see how energy management fits into the whole idea of Green IT as well. Yeah. And then, just another tip. At the moment, when you want to find out if a topic is gaining interest, especially in the operational improvement area of companies, one of the triggers or one of the tips is to check on the formulation of an international standard or guideline. Okay, ISO is one such, The mere fact that there is an international standard already out for energy management gives you the importance that people are feeling around the world for this, and more importantly, the companies are also on the verge of or very keen to show that they are following best practices as well. Okay, so it gives them a third-party accreditation and a name which they can carry to the market, so to speak. Okay, so given that as the background about the company, I mean, we have helped about 1,000 customers get certified to different ISO standards, starting from environment to health and safety, like I mentioned a while ago. In the recent past, considering the market that we are in, Southeast Asia is predominantly run by outsourcing as a business model, calling for a substantial amount of technology investments, and 50% of the GDP in the country is really driven by IT and IT-enabled services. So, which can also give you an idea about how much green IT is relevant to the market. And on top of it, how management system to be able to drive such green initiatives is necessary. That is where energy management system fits into its rightful place. And myself, Tim mentioned my name. I guess it's a tongue twister. It's still just half of my first name, which has been displayed on your screens a while ago. I run the operations for ECCI in the Philippines. Have been doing consulting for the last 8 years, predominantly in best practices implementation as well. So we'll keep the questions to the end. Let me go right into the presentation and share very quickly what is the agenda for the rest of the webinar. We'll talk about energy efficiency and energy efficiency management briefly. We will try to look at it from the perspective of why energy efficiency is important, number one. Number two, we will talk about what sort of management systems or best practices are out there which can help us implement energy efficiency well. We will zero in on one specific management system, which is ISO 50000. I'll walk you through very quickly about how it can be implemented successfully in companies and what are the key steps involved in over there. And from that point on, we should be able to field questions that you all have. Okay, so should not take more than 30 to 45 minutes. So we have enough time for discussions if there is any at the end. Okay, so going right in, I think we always talk about, before introducing any new concept, we want to talk about the 5W and 2H, as they call it, no? The what, why, where, when, who, and the 2H standing for how, and the most important question these days, how much. Okay, so while all these are important, the most critical, or the first question that we want to answer ourselves before we can commit into any initiative, is the why. Okay, so of course, as they say, as long as you know why, the what and how can be figured out along the way. And the reason for why energy management is just too obvious. Okay, so there is just too much of knowledge and shall we say manifestations out there. The real question is why not? Yeah. As somebody who's living in a country which is just overtaken Japan as the most expensive for domestic consumption of power, and second most expensive in Asia for industrial usage, there is no other way but to be able to better manage and conserve energy usage. So one is to conserve and be able to control the spend towards it. The other is availability in the future. Where are we going to get energy in the future? So you can see the slide already shares with you. The forecast is not going to reduce. That shows that there's no way there's reduction in energy consumption anytime in the near future. Okay, so everything is talking about 50% plus usage, be it in Asia, be it the global demand. Okay, and do we have enough power sources out there to address all these aspects? Not really. It's a big question. Yeah, so that is a very good reason on why we want to be able to conserve energy. If you are not yet convinced, then you have a little bit more information here. No? So 400% variation in energy use intensity in the buildings. Okay, so because of not all the buildings are built with the same infrastructure. Not all of them have the same capability to dissipate or conserve energy. So there's significant amount of energy wastages which are being prevailing around. There's very little improvement in the means in which certain companies are doing their operations. Okay, and unfortunately, capturing energy waste has been hampered by lack of focus on energy management per se. The moment that there is no intent to cut this, then it makes it all the more difficult to be able to follow energy management or energy conservation. Okay. The number of reasons are just humongous now, so we will also look at it in the next few slides. Number one, of course, at this point, I'm still talking about a corporate or an entity level setup, friends. So this is still not individual level. Yeah. So there's no one central reason or focus from all the companies. Yeah. So maybe the very large ones, like I would call consumer electronic companies like Toshiba, Samsung. We're talking about eco-friendly LED and things like that in the goods that they manufacture. But for those type of things where you see very clearly, in most companies, the energy management function has been highly decentralized. There's very little or no support, if ever. Okay, so which means support in the form of initiatives, in the form of resources, in the form of funding. Okay, of course, nothing is free in this world. Before you can save something, you will have to invest. So that becomes very critical. And as the last point goes, because people consider this as capital intensive, which in some cases it can turn out to be, okay, it has always been deprioritized. Yeah, but make no mistake, energy efficiency and energy management can be done with very little investment as well. Okay, so maybe towards the end we'll talk about some simple tips. I can see the Green IT Week webinar page has been carrying a lot of Green IT tips. Okay, so 100 plus, I'm sure we can talk about one or two here. So is energy management really important? What can it do for companies? If you do it well, what is the benefit that you can get? Okay, so here are some simple examples. Of course, we're talking about companies of large size, and hence the dollar savings also seem to be in very high value. But all you need to do is look at it as a percentage of the business that you actually do. Okay, and it will make a lot of sense already. We have helped companies locally in Southeast Asia do energy efficiency measures where they've been able to cut their electricity bills by nothing less than 15%. Okay, so in dollar value, considering where we live, it would still not be more than $100,000 or maybe sometimes even lesser, but it still is sizable considering what the company makes per month. Okay, so you can see an automobile company like Ford, a real estate company. Okay, so Eastman Kodak. Okay, so known for the wrong reasons right now, but still, the extent of savings that they have had. You can look at service-oriented organizations like schools. Okay, so which brings us to the point today. The number of we can't just say anymore that it's on service companies, especially the IT, to run the business. Do they make products? No. Do they use heavy machinery? Well, yes and no. Okay, so where does the so if they don't make products and if there are not so much of effluence, then how do they use the energy? You can take simple examples like data centers, okay, which needs to cool down the racks and the hard drives that the companies are using to well below normal room temperature, for which significant amount of HVAC, heating, okay. And trust me, we have done enough amount of data center assessments in this part of the world to show 80% of the energy is used to the data center server room, for example. Okay, talk about companies like Accenture, for instance, not to quote anybody, but again, in size, maybe Convergys, for instance, so IBM, who in large countries deploy anywhere from 20,000 people to 50,000 people. Think of the amount of energy these guys use to generate every. Research shows that than what a manufacturing company with 5,000 people would do, okay, on a daily basis. Yeah, so a crude comparison. Okay, so there's no very impossible system that has been reflected on this slide. So the first thing we want to be convinced about and comprehend is the fact that energy management is a big topic even in non-manufacturing or non-conventional industries, and in fact they are the biggest contributors these days, considering the amount of heat generated by the technology equipments that they are using. Okay, so how do we benefit from implementing energy management a system? Yeah, so number one, all people have intent. No, it's like doing good energy management is like doing good yoga, right? Everybody knows yoga is good for health, but not necessarily all of us do it. If we did, I'm sure we'll all be fit and firm. Okay, not necessarily same way. When it comes to energy management, I'm sure everybody is interested, but probably one of the key things that needs to be put in place is a standard framework. It's a global framework which will help things work on its own. So an energy management system can do that. It will give you a well-recognized and internationally accepted framework to be able to follow energy efficiency practices. So more importantly, the last thing we want to do is, when talking about energy efficiency, make it as a separate activity for the employees or for the people on the ground. Yeah, it's not like they have shortage of work on a daily basis. Everybody has a lot of work to do. So the best thing is to be able to integrate it with their existing management system or their daily way of doing things. So it becomes a routine rather than a completely separate activity, number one. Number two, to be able to provide a harmonized setup, yeah, so which will also comply with other regulations that are there in that particular country of interest maybe. Okay, so that also gives you better stranglehold on the implementation interest of the organization. Okay, so and everybody is looking for a structure, so a logical, more importantly, a methodology that can be used consistently across locations, across industries, with very little tweaking to be done, gives them a sense of confidence and the future sharing of best practices as well. Okay. And the last item here, yeah, it also assists organizations to better utilize the energy consuming assets. Okay, so we will look at in the next couple of slides, maybe a little after, where we will talk about significant energy users. Okay, that's the whole, that's the name of the game when it comes to energy management. You need to know what and who are using the maximum amount of energy. Only then can we save. Yeah? As they say, the Pareto rule works everywhere. So like a charm, the vital few versus trivial many. We need to understand what is the vital few rather than focus on the trivial many. So we will look at that in a bit. These are essentially reinforcing the points we have just discussed a while ago. And it makes sense for companies, friends, to follow an energy management system simply because they also get the right to flaunt what they have done. Okay, so it certainly matters in an economy which is becoming more and more global. So especially in countries which are not necessarily considered as first world, yeah, it is very important to be able to follow such practices, get an accreditation or an external a stamp of authority which can tell you that yes, you're doing good practices, you are keeping it at par at the best of the companies in the world. So it makes it easier for you to also go out and bid for new business, for instance. So so it helps you do that to a very large extent. Okay, so for large companies which depend on supply chain to a large extent, this can also, the energy management system can also help you do one step up, one step down. Okay, so you can see companies like Marks and Spencer, they do it extremely well. both energy and social performance audits. Yeah, so where every supplier of theirs has to be following the energy management practices, social management practices, labor laws, etc. And also when it goes down to their users, which is typically customers, they also advise. Of course, that they cannot control, but they advocate new ideas. Okay, so if you're seeing words like GHG, the last bullet point, GHG stands for greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases predominantly pollute the environment and increase the carbon content in the atmosphere, which also leads to global warming and the whole set of environmental impacts. So it becomes very easy to combine energy management along with GHG control projects as well, which again most of the companies today are taking up and doing. Okay, so like we said a few minutes ago, it's like yoga. It's very good, but not necessarily everybody does it. Here is another snapshot of why this is the case usually. Okay, so at least not yet. The first point is true. Okay, it is not yet about everything is about energy efficiency. As they always segment a particular industry or market, friends, they call somebody as best in class. Okay, that's the highest level of companies. And then you have the good companies, then you have average companies, and then of course you have another whole bunch of laggards, as they call it. Laggards and the average form again about 80% of the market. 20% is between the good and best in class. Maybe 1 to 2% is really best in class. Everybody else is good only. Yeah. So which means again there is no regulation. There's not enough regulation rather to make the business to be all around energy efficiency. And the people who really make the decision in a company, the CEOs and the CFOs, are not the ones who are working on the shop floor, or vice versa. The guys who are looking at the energy data are not the ones who are CEOs to make decisions. Okay, so budgets. It's a myth that companies don't have budget. Okay, so the large ones especially, but when it comes to energy, there always seems to be or energy efficiency related projects, there always seems to be a certain amount of resistance. Also, okay, I'm doing energy, I would like to control, but what is the basis? How do I know whether I'm doing well or not? I also want benchmarks. I also want to be able to assess performance and set up fairly achievable targets. So lack of experience also comes into play certain times. Okay, so yet another reason we want to keep in mind. But otherwise, these are just points to highlight and reinstate the fact that energy efficiency has not become mainstream as yet, not as much as we would like. Okay. But okay, we've talked enough about why not, and what are the challenges which are stopping energy efficiency from becoming a mainstream topic. Here is an easy way to show what are the typical steps if you were to follow energy management in your organization. Okay, so very quick, we will look at it from an ISO perspective in another minute or two, but here are the simple set of steps, guys. Yeah, number one, you need to know what is your energy consumption right now. Like they say, what you cannot measure, you cannot manage. What you cannot manage, you certainly cannot improve. Okay, so meter your energy consumption and collect as much data as possible of the current status. Okay, once you do that, then you find out opportunities that are available to save energy. How would we do that? This is what we talked about as significant energy users. So you need to know which of the parts within your machinery of a company is using or contributing to the maximum amount of energy usage. That will be used as a basis, and you can then focus on, okay, I have 20 different items which are contributing to the 100% energy consumption, but 5 items lead to 80% consumption. Let me focus on that. Okay, typical Pareto, like we said. So you find out opportunities like that. Then be able to find out what actions can be taken to address this opportunity. Okay, how much we save, friends, is not the most important thing to start with. Yeah, do we find opportunities? If so, what can we do? So that's fine to start with. Later we can make it a lot more streamlined and data oriented. Okay, so item number 3. Last one, track progress by analyzing data. Okay, so very important. Why should we track? Are we not trusting the guys who are doing the job? Not really. As they say, do trust, but do not tempt. Okay, so which means you trust them enough to do the job, but not too much that you tempt them to make mistakes. Yeah? So we will also need to have some sort of a control mechanism to track progress. Okay, so these sound like extremely simple management principles. That is what they are. Okay, so now let's just translate these principles into best practices and see what is out there really for us to follow. Okay, a very quick idea, guys. So slide 11, we are talking about 3 major, these are not the only ones, but 3 major frameworks around the world which are used to help companies manage their energy usage. Okay, we start from the left. Number 1 is called Energy Map. Energy Map is a management program for energy efficiency. This is a common topic in Europe. Almost all European countries have what you call energy authorities, and all these energy authorities have an internal program for their country called Energy Map. It's a very simple process. It's a 4 or 5 step process or 4 or 5 phased process. We'll talk about it in the next slide, but quite successful in the countries. But the countries which used to implement are the ones which are not doing so well today. Okay, Ireland, Spain, Italy, for example. Okay, so it's certainly not because of the energy map that the countries are failing. I'm sure you know, but these are countries, unfortunately, who are not doing well right now. Number 2, Energy Star. This is really more product-centric, friends. I'm sure you walk into any appliance store in whichever part of the world you are, you will be able to find refrigerators, air conditioners, televisions, home theater systems. Everything is carrying Energy Star. No, there are many of the products which carry Energy Star as a logo, right? So again, it's a European initiative. It's in America as well, quite popular. So it's an initiative which certifies your product as Energy Star compliant. Okay, so again, Energy Star is a rating system. It provides you with several criteria as a company to follow as your processes. So when your product comes out, it can be certified as Energy Star. Okay, so this is like Euro 2 and things like that for the automotive industry. Very similar. Yeah, for Euro 2, Euro 1 was for emission management. Energy Star is for energy conservation and usage, basically. Okay. Number 3, our topic of interest today is ISO 50001. Okay. ISO 50001 is it's a governance system. You could be implementing Energy Map. It could still fall under ISO 50001. You could be producing products which are Energy Star certified, and you could still be compliant to ISO 50001. So that way, ISO 50001 is a governance mechanism or a hair cover which helps you manage your overall energy management system. It is both good and bad in the sense it is good because it can work with any management system you have. It is bad because it is not prescriptive. Okay, it does not say you have to cut energy by so much, you have to bring down emissions by so much. No, it helps you work at your own pace. That way, it also does not give you a hard deadline or something like that. But ISO 50000 really focuses on the management system, which is nothing but interrelated processes. Yeah, which means you implement an ISO system today for 50001. Even after 3 years, you must be able to follow what has been put in place, of course with improvements as necessary, so it can be successfully implemented. Okay, so we will probably take a very quick look at Energy Map before going into ISO 50001. Or we're going to talk about Energy Star to start with. So it's an 8-step process. Number 1 is commitment. Okay, it is standard in any setup. And energy management, like most other management systems, is a top-down approach, which means the management has to say, this is our focus. Only then it can boil down to the shop floor. So number one step is to commit to continuous improvement in energy management. In order to make the commitment a reality, you need a team or a resource pool that will work on this. So you create a dedicated team. Number three, the team's first job is to know where you are right now and then set up a target or a goal. So assess performance, current state, set up goals, future state, and then make the bridge to get from current state to future state, which is to create an action plan. Okay. Once a plan is created, roll it out, evaluate progress consistently, and then recognize or reward achievements accordingly. And then again, set up a new set of goals, set up action plan, the whole work. So this is continuous improvement. It is not linear. Okay. Energy Star. That way you will find, friends, none of these are different from one another. Okay. So if you talk about energy map, like I said, MAP is a management program or a management action plan with 5 key steps. Commit, which means make a commitment towards energy efficiency. Identify. What are we going to identify? Identify energy saving opportunities or identify significant energy users. Plan to make them more conservative. Number 4, take action. Okay, act to be able to implement or put the plan in action. Based on the action, you make a review of how the performance is doing. Okay, take action and then review. So these are the 5 steps. You can see the 9 steps in the previous slide versus the 5 steps here are not very different. And like I told you, the first bullet, friends, you can see SEAI. So the energy map here is published by the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. Okay, so going to, okay, maybe before we go into the ISO 50000 model, I would say very quickly to give you a snapshot, any management system which is energy efficient, energy focused, has to address all the 3 areas we have mentioned here. Okay, so it cannot be successful without this. Will I just be able to make the returns or see the difference just by putting in a set of tools and techniques? Not possible. No, technical alone is not enough. Smart meters, not enough. Yeah. So what else do I need? I need the people to understand what is supposed to be done. It is not robots. Yeah, it does not. Things do not work by themselves. You need people to work it. People need to work the system. More importantly, you need the governance. You need the watch system. Yeah. So you need the watching as well, which is the management level commitment, management level monitoring. So the entire organization knows that it is a key priority for the organization. Okay. So there. So energy efficiency, technical, people, and organizational. Yeah. You might be looking at this. I mean, if you look at other ads, friends, on newspapers and online, you will see another common term used for this called PPT. Yeah, P for people, another P for process, and T for technology. So this is pretty much the same. Yeah. So now, having talked about all the setups or the basic things that need to be in place for a successful energy management system, I'll take you to the ISO 50001, which is the topic for the day. Okay, a quick timeline perspective. Typically, it takes 3-4 years for any ISO standard to be developed. By the way, there are about 20,000 plus ISO standards in the world today. ISO is responsible for almost all things that have been universally standardized, from something as simple as your SIM card, which is universal in size. I mean, any SIM fits any phone, but for the new micro SIM, of course, no, to your credit card, yeah, which is standard size and can fit into, or ATM cards, which fit into any ATM machine, to your A4 paper, which is A4 in UK, A4 in India, A4 in the Philippines, A4 in Australia. It's the same A4. So all of these are set in standard by ISO. So they have product certification / product standardization. There is another division for process standardization, and there is a third division for people standardization. Okay, so ISO 50001 is a process standardization means. Okay, so it is for standardizing processes in companies, not for products. So this standard, I would say, is still hot, still new, less than a year since its formal release. Okay, so gaining interest right now. Samsung is the first company in this region to actually get certified. LG has followed suit. Toshiba is looking into the standard seriously. Accenture is planning to implement the standard. There's a company from UK called Serco, which I'm told also is keen on energy and environmental management. These are all companies with nothing less than 500,000 employees in size. Okay, so around the world. So I'm sure it is also catching on the other end in small Japanese companies who are always hungry for standards, with people as small as 50 to 100 people in size. Yeah, so very interesting. So it is not necessarily for power generation, friends. This is for energy consumption and conservation as a whole. So it is not applicable only for companies that produce power. It is applicable for anybody who uses power and feels the need to minimize or optimize its usage. Okay, so hope that clarifies the scope. So what does ISO 50001 do? Okay, so at a very high level, the ISO 50001 framework gives you a structure to develop a policy, okay, an energy management policy, if you may, on an energy policy in the company, which stands as a mandate which the management sets about for its entire organization, saying, as a company, we will focus on energy efficiency. Now, the moment the policy becomes standard, based on the policy, to achieve the results, the companies will set up targets and objectives. Yeah? So which again, the standard gives you support for. Okay? So once you set objectives, we will need to also define what type of savings are we looking at. Okay, so which is to implement action plans. So as you implement, you consistently measure performance, review effectiveness, and then make appropriate corrective action as well. Okay, so that finishes the cycle of ISO 50001. Okay, so we have gone through this a while ago, friends. So I'm just gonna skip this and make your life easier. Yeah. So what will it do? It pretty much helps you save, or at least gives you a framework to consistently save energy usage. Okay. So why? Again, we have talked about it. Broadly, we can classify this into two types of benefits. Internal benefit, which is about energy savings, better commitment from employees, maybe more discipline from the people. Okay, so things like that. And external benefits would be market recognition, customer satisfaction, supply chain efficiency. Okay, social outlook of the company will change dramatically. Okay, so shareholder value, okay, or perceived value of the company becomes higher among stakeholders. So these are the two broad categories: internal benefit and external benefit. So the mix of it is shown here. You can see how with time. Okay, so actually ENMS can help you reduce cost. Okay, so obviously when you are in high production and when you are in normal operations, there's always a 5% up and down. Okay, in terms of consumption. So the moment you start implementing an energy management system, you will see, okay, substantial cut in consumption. Okay, so this is where I was telling you a while ago. Remember, we said most of these initiatives need investment. Okay, but not really. It is possible to actually do energy efficiency practices without investing heavily on it. Okay, so purely good housekeeping, okay, or cleaning up our act, so to speak, can already yield good amount of savings. Okay, so that is the phase one: decreasing energy cost through simple energy saving measures. No major investment, purely good practices, good housekeeping, 5S helps you cut costs. Okay. Number two, You see the results, then you say, okay, let me invest. Whatever I saved, I'll invest a fraction of it into energy efficiency. Boom, you will see a market improvement in savings. Yeah, so not incremental, but breakthrough improvement. Okay, more investments. I mean, again, the type of energy efficiency investments you're making might change. Yeah, so depending on that, you will consistently see improvements. But in many cases, you can fund your own, or the energy savings can fund your energy efficiency investments in the future. Okay, so what I was searching for is really this, friends, because I think this does justice to the webinar as well. So, oh great, we can achieve all of these things through ISO 50001 by implementing it. So does it mean that just because I start saying ISO 50000, ISO 50000 every day that we will start saving? Of course not. This gives you a framework and a mindset, and more importantly, a system within which our people can work. So it is important that we not only plan, but we do what we have planned. We consistently check on what has been acted upon against the plan, and then act based on the performance to find out how well or how more can we change what we are doing. So this is called the PDCA cycle, friends. Maybe in the next 1 or 2 slides I can share that as well. But keeping the ISO 50001 alone in mind, you create an energy policy, you make a plan for identifying key energy users, implement and operate the plan, do consistent checking. How do we check? You make a monitoring and measurement plan and use that plan to do the checking. In order to do good checking, you need to educate the people on how to do audit, then perform the internal audit, use the outputs of the internal audit for a management level review of performance, then decide on action items and contribute towards continual improvement. So that is the overall cycle of ISO 50001. Okay, so when explained, I'm going to slip one slide, guys. I'm going to take you to slide 23 and 24, which you can view alternately. So like I said, the 4 stages is called plan, do, check, and act, which is the basis for the 20,000 plus ISO standards which are out there today in the industry. Okay, so the plan is to create a clear policy, and based on that, identify performance indicators to be able to set up targets, then implement action plans, then check on the performance against the action plans, and then make corrective action and preventive action. Okay, it's explained in a little bit more detail in the next slide. So you can see the green element on the left is the first step, planning, followed by the red, which is doing, orange, which is checking, management review, which is acting, in yellow color. Yeah, so these are the 4 steps. Again, you can see all the items we talked about a few minutes ago being represented here. Ensuring management commitment, number 1 under planning. Make sure that the commitment is translated into an energy policy. Ensure appropriate responsibility and authority are provided to the right guys in the team. Make a plan to do proper energy data management. Okay. Identify all the key energy users in the company. Okay. Then set up goals, targets, and projects to achieve energy efficiency. Do the projects under doing. Okay. Check them using appropriate measures, and then act on cases that can contribute to improvement. Okay. I'm going to take you back a couple of slides to 22, which I skipped. As you can see here, ENMS cannot just, ENMS by the way stands for Energy Management System. So it can not only operate on its own, but it can work with any other management system that the company already has. And trust me, in many cases, the companies usually have more than one management system in place, be it for quality, environment, health and safety, information security, complaints management, the whole works. Okay, so moving from there, these are just a representation of how the clauses are structured within the ISO 50001. So you can see the what means what are the aspects that must be implemented. The how is showing you how to get to the what we have planned for, and the result, which is what everybody wants, profit at the end of the day. Okay, so I hope the slide which is shown here is clear. Here is a more detailed step-by-step action for implementing energy management system. This is after creating a need for energy efficiency in the company. Number one is to set up an energy efficiency team. So there must be a commitment from senior management, an identified program manager who will in turn pass his work to a team leader, who in turn will work with the team, which typically call it a core team or working team, which has representation from all the key departments in the company. Number two, identify awareness program opportunities. So very important to find out where there is potential for saving. Then while you're finding out the potential for saving, you baseline our current usage and use that as the basis to start new initiatives. Step 3, based on the baseline, establish objectives and then establish an energy profile for our current setup. Okay. So obviously the objectives that you set cannot be out of the world. It has to be SMART. Yeah, so I'm sure most of you know it already, what SMART stands for. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. That's how we should set objectives. So companies can, so the people who are on the field can follow it fairly well. This is not a one-man show. This is certainly not just the management's job. Okay, everybody in the company needs to get involved. So it is imperative that we identify the people who need to know it and then communicate to them clearly. So hence a need for a clear communication plan. So as you can see, identify communication goals and objectives, assess existing lines of communication, determine the audience to whom you want to campaign, anticipate challenges related to that, develop appropriate messages to reach out to them, and use necessary tools to be able to reach out to them well. Yeah, with the amount of improvement today in social media and things like that, we are just literally a click away from reaching out to our people, be it good or bad. So we need to make the best use of such technology that we have available. So step 5 is to implement the practices which have been identified, evaluate success, perform a management level review, and use that as a basis to improve the plans that has been made already. Okay, so as you can see, policy, objectives, resources, the 3 cornerstones of project success is what we have to go back and improve if need be. Yeah, and this is called CI, continuous improvement. Yeah, the moment we think that we have arrived, we have achieved savings, I think that will be the last day of improvement. We certainly cannot stay in the same place. We will only be going down in performance. So typically, how do we set up energy objectives? No? So of course today, friends, we will not have the time to cover what are the templates to use, what are the measures I should be talking about. So instead, to be able to give you an idea of how to set up objectives, here is a quick basis. No? Of course, one basis is your baseline, meaning currently how are you performing? So your evaluated data. Number 2, what is the requirement right now for us? Is there compliance requirement already coming from third party? Okay, if so, can we work towards that? Can we use that as the basis for energy objectives creation? Okay, so that is the second part. So these 2 will be the basis to create energy objectives. So you can use these 2 as the basis. I'm sure you will not go wrong. Unless you're doing already very well, then you can go one level higher. Okay, so these are some of the key functions, functional roles rather, which must be part of a typical energy management system functioning well. So an energy manager This is more like the manager that we, as program manager whom we described in a couple of slides ago. The team leader, otherwise who becomes the management representative. The management representative is a word which is very prevalent in the ISO world. Okay, so don't get confused about it. You can relate this to a team leader typically. The departments in charge, yeah, so who are nothing but the functions and the so the next two departments in charge and in charge within the departments. These would be the process owners, as they call it. So they will be the foot soldiers who will help you implement what we want to implement. So their support is very, very critical. And if a company were to do everything with their own resources, then, and if they were to do very well, then nothing like it. But it never works like that. So that is why we say, like, no man is an island, no company is an island as well. So it is imperative that you also get best practices and share knowledge with other organizations in the same industry, maybe from a different industry, so you get the best of the best, so you can use it to act properly. Yeah? So external advisors certainly help you do what you're doing better. Okay. So a very quick snapshot. Typical barriers, friends, we are nearing the end. So to be able to implement good energy management, which you must avoid, there must be consistent communication with the people. We should always be letting them know about information on good practices that people can follow at their level. If it takes time to do a corporate level engagement, then individually let's start giving them information, saying turn off your laptops before you go away. You know, there are campaigns which say for a 500-person company, if everybody was using a computer, if only your computer was turned off 8 hours a day, you could be saving, considering the Philippine setup, about $50,000 a month of energy bills. Okay, so campaign is what will make the difference. No? So number 2 and 3, you need to have information, you need to have data. Unless you have this and then interpret it properly, the results are not going to be there. Okay, so do consider improvement and efficiency opportunities are available in systems optimization. I think that can go a long way to improve the operations. Okay, so a measurement system is always a problem. So if we do not have a proper measurement system, then our calculations could go haywire and our results equally bad. Okay, so I think we need to focus on that. And again, I'd like to stress upon the fact that people are the drivers of this initiative. It is imperative people are familiar with what to do. So lack of awareness would be a very, very high probability factor that will prevent you from having good energy management in the company. Okay. So in summary, friends, ISO 50001 is in many ways, companies who have been trying to implement energy management would know this very well. Okay, they always wanted a standard framework which they can check against, and also companies who are following it, so there is a good benchmarking. So ISO 50001 provides that. What is good about it is it is also aligned with other best practices and ISO standards available in the industry. Number 3, it can work hand in hand with principles or frameworks which are completely not ISO oriented, which can still be used. So which means it does take care of aspects which are not covered by the third-party standards which have been out there. Okay, so, and most importantly, implementing ISO 50001 does not necessarily mean putting a hole in your pocket. Okay, it is not such an expensive affair. It really depends on the size of your company, the current setup, and things like that. So if you are not mature enough to implement ISO 50001, then no need to go for it as a certification. You could do it purely as a good practice implementation, just to help you make things better within the organization. Okay, so here is a quick snapshot for people who might ask, how long will it take to implement this? What are the key steps that needs to be there? Keeping the PDCA model in mind, guys, we have mapped it to our approach that you see in the first column on the left: the discover, define, document, deploy, and determine. It's a 5-stage process mapped to the PDCA, where we say typically it would take about 6 months to effectively implement the management system of ISO 50001. We are not saying that at the end of 6 months you will start saving money left, right, and center, but you will have a strong system which will be a basis for you to start saving. Okay, so there you go. That is a very quick idea in that sense. Okay, so I don't have anything much to add, because I think, while there's several other things we can talk about, I believe it is probably right to stop here in terms of information about ISO 50001. If you want, later we will share with Tim and team from FITS an online assessment tool which will help you understand where you are right now when it comes to energy management. So you can use that as a sort of a baseline setup to say, should I or should I not go for such best practices. Okay. With that, I'll turn over the presentation to Tim right now.
Great. Well, thank you very much for Karthik for that very wonderful and thought-provoking presentation. I'm sure our audience will get a lot out of that, particularly around such a new standard such as ISO 50001. So I'll actually just hand back the screen to you, Karthik.
Okay.
Just in case you need to refer back to your slides during the Q&A process. So with that, audience, we'll certainly now commence the Q&A portion of our live speaker session. So if you do have any questions that you would like to ask Karthik about his presentation, his work with ECC International, or his experiences in green IT and sustainable IT, then please submit your questions now in the questions box in the webinar control panel. So Karthik will address each question in turn, and please remember, if you would like to speak with Karthik or a representative of the Foundation for IT Sustainability, please feel free to email info@fits.org at any time following this session, and we'll be more than happy to assist your query following the conclusion of today's session. So now for the user-submitted questions, Karthik. Okay, so
the questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll read them out to you, and that way you can respond in kind. The first question we have for you, Karthik, is who is ISO 50001 really applicable to? Can small to medium-sized organizations yield strong returns also?
Good question. I guess the answer is, I think, yes. There are many companies, small, medium, and large, who have implemented this. But as always, it boils down to the need. In most cases, the need always starts with, or the pickup always is with the tier 1 companies. So as of now, there are not as many small companies who have implemented it so far. But like any ISO standard, I'm sure it is bound to trickle down to the small and medium companies as well.
Thank you very much. How can organizations gain certification to ISO 50001?
I believe one way to answer this would be to reflect back on the last but one slide. It's a due process. You will need to go through, as a standard, ISO already lays down certain mandatory requirements when it comes to documentation, making certain things available. Okay, so data collection and things like that. So the process is to have a current state assessment done, use the current state assessment as a basis to implement certain good practices. From that implementation, show records or evidence for actual process improvement, and then hire a third-party auditor to come in and verify what you've done is right. So this is like using a financial auditor for your audit for your annual report, which companies have to publish. So very similarly, we'll need to hire a third-party auditor. There are several companies who do this. This is certainly not the big four. There are other operational auditing companies like TUV from Germany, ISC from Australia, UL from the US, DQS again from Germany, DNV from Europe as well, SGS from Switzerland. So these are all some of the auditing companies who do that job. The number of the effort it takes to do an audit depends on the size of your company. The bigger the size, which when I say size, number of employees, the bigger the manpower, the longer the audit. They have got very clear calculations on how long it takes to do an audit for 100 people versus a 10,000 people company. It's a matter of negotiating with them the mandate rates and things like that. one should decide to get certified, and when you work on it focused, you should be able to get yourself certified in 6 to 8 months.
Thank you very much.
Does that answer your question, Tim?
I believe it does. The next question we have is another user submitted question is, can we use ISO 50001 in a cement factory?
Absolutely. Actually, the scope for usage in a cement factory is significantly high because of the boilers and the chimneys that you have and the kilns that are used for mixing the raw materials, the conveyor belts. There is significant amount of opportunity for saving, because the machineries are always heavy machinery there. When it comes to packaging, there's significant amount of savings opportunity. The amount of oil that is used to run these machines. All of these cases, pumps which are used. In many cases, the cement factories also run a power generation unit internally, so that also adds. Okay, so yes, there's significant opportunity.
Thanks very much, Karthik. The next question we have for you today is, how does ISO?
Yep.
How do ISO 15001 fit with existing management systems? For example, ISO 9001 or ISO 14001.
Sorry, I didn't get the question. So can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, of course. The question was, how does ISO 50001 fit with existing management systems? For example, ISO 9001 or ISO 14001.
Okay. I mean, the common feature among all these ISO standards is the fact that, like I said, it is based on a PDCA model. Okay, so the plan, do, check, back remains consistent and uniform across all the 4 stages. The only difference being, when it comes to implementing a quality management system, you set up quality objectives. When it comes to environmental management system, you set up environmental objectives. But in the case of energy, you set up energy objectives. Yeah, that is the major difference among all of this. Having said that, the generic requirements necessary for complying to an ISO system remains common across the board. Okay, so so that is the biggest benefit or advantage. And most of the documentation and framework that you use as a practice for QMS or EMS can be repeated when it comes to ENMS.
Thanks very much, Karthik. The next question is, what kinds of professionals can help organizations implement ISO 50001?
What kind of companies or professionals did you say?
What kinds of professionals can help organizations?
Typically, functions you mean, no? The kind of functions that these guys play in a company. Typically, the guys would come from facilities, people who are managing the sites, who are taking care of energy meters, who are taking care of, shall we say, facility improvement aspects. Okay, so in more often than not, the site manager or the plant manager in a manufacturing setup would be the one who takes care of energy management as well.
Okay, thank you, Karthik. The next question we have is, I know you've mentioned during your presentation the importance of the plan, do, check and act phases, but as a summary, what initial steps would you recommend companies take to prepare for adopting ISO 50001?
Okay, the first, I mean, the number one question is the company already following any other management system? I guess that's the first most important question. If the answer is yes, then I believe most people would already know what to do. But in this particular case of having an existing management system, the key step would be to extend it to energy management by creating an energy policy and doing a current state assessment. Okay, so we'll need to do a current state assessment of how much energy is being used by the company and where does the energy usage happen. So you need baseline data. So that is the first step. From there, you can review it with the energy manager in the company or the facility manager in the company and decide how far or how near do we want to take the initiative forward. I believe this applies both to certified and non-certified companies. The non-certified company will probably do it with a slightly difficult approach because they wouldn't have had the experience in the past. The guys who already have an ISO system would have very well documented management system, so it's easier to get it done.
Great, thanks very much, Karthik. I've just got another question for you here. What are the most common challenges in implementing ISO 50001?
Like we discussed a few minutes ago, maybe I go back to this. Yeah. So, I mean, to look at it as a technical management system defeats the purpose, because this is really successful only by enjoining the people and asking them to implement. So the first thing is communication. It needs to be clear. There must be there must be a very clear management commitment from the top. If they do not see the commitment, the people are not going to follow the system. So I guess lack of management commitment is another big problem. Number three, availability of data. It might be difficult in some setups. Okay, so probably people never saw the need to collect before. So the legacy continues and they may not have basis now, which is again a challenge to start off an energy management initiative. Number four is the last point here, lack of awareness among people. So if people don't know what to do, then I guess they are not in a good position to get this done. So that's I would say these are the major factors actually.
Great, thanks, Karthik. Just another question for you. You mentioned one of the greatest benefits of implementing an energy management system is transparency and really to facilitate communication within an organization. How would you recommend an IT staff member best approach their superiors regarding developing and the implementation of an EMS?
An IT staff member, you said?
Well, it could technically be any staff member, really.
Mm-hmm. So the question is, how could a staff member present the data to the management so they could get the idea of the need for energy management and they will implement practices accordingly? Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct, Karthik.
Okay. The people on the shop floor are the best people to know where things are going wrong. I guess that is why they have suggestion boxes in any department for them to be able to say, hey, tell me where we can improve. Because no person sitting in the boardroom can say this is wrong, that is wrong. Sure, they will have strategic view on it, but operationally what works and doesn't work to help the strategy be achieved are the guys on the shop floor. So be it IT, like you said, be it production, be it QA, the guys will have significant number of ways to present the lack of performance of energy within the company actually. Yeah. So if it was IT, for example, the key areas to look for will be in data center operations, in the number of servers or computers that are being used, number two. So you could make simple assessments like we did a while ago. Okay, 50 people company, 40 computers being used, amount of energy used in a 24-hour day is this much, work hours is only 12 hours, but people leave their computers on overnight. So if 25 computers was left on for so much time, so that is a simple calculation from activity to financial value. Yeah, so I guess that is one way for IT to reflect on performance and share with shall we say the management. Now people are talking about green HR, where HR people are in a position to comment on how company is performing, more importantly, control. Okay, so I mean, we've talked about green procurement, we've talked about green IT so much in the recent past. Green HR is a new topic. This talks about cutting down printing of paper, ensuring you just don't let go people as such. So which means you're also leading to more cost when it comes to interviews, accordingly leaving emissions in the environment and things like that. So I'm sure each department has certain key matrices which they can talk about and convince the management about the importance of energy efficiency.
Great. Thanks very much, Karthik. If there are any remaining questions, audience, this session is due to close shortly. So if you do have any remaining questions for Karthik, please submit them now into the questions panel, and we'll have Karthik respond to those. If there are no further questions, then we will draw this session to a close shortly. So we'll just wait a few moments for any remaining questions. Okay, I think that might be it for the question portion of our session. So that brings our webinar session to an end. I'd like to thank you, Karthik, so much for your time and willingness to share your information and your experiences with us today. It's been a fantastic presentation. I'd like to also take the opportunity to thank everyone who came along today and participated. We're glad you could join us and certainly hope this session was helpful for you. Just a reminder, the recording of this session will be made available within 24 hours via the Green IT Week virtual conference webinar registration page, the same page you used to access this session. Did you have any closing remarks or comments, Karthik, that you'd like to make?
None. I'd like to thank you, Tim, and the FITS team for organizing a great session. Like I said earlier, I wish you all the best for the future sessions, and I hope the team was able to learn something through the webinar.
Well, thank you very much again, Karthik. We really do appreciate your time. That concludes our session for today. So thank you everyone again, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. If you'd like to find out more information about our upcoming sessions for the rest of the International Green IT Awareness Week, you can visit greenitweek.org and check out the event program as well as the virtual conference page. We'd certainly look forward to seeing you at future sessions. Thank you very much and have a lovely evening, and please take care.